Behind the Story with Naomi and Lisa, where we discover the story behind your favourite stories. I'm Lisa Renee from the Collaborative Press, and I'm also a women's fiction contemporary author.
My name is Naomi Craig, and I am historical fiction author of Rahab's Courage. Last episode, we had a draw for Dana McNeely's biblical fiction debut, Rain. The winner is posted in the show notes, so make sure that you are checking those out. Congratulations. Thank you for joining our little giveaway, and Dana will be in touch with you soon. So, Lisa, what have you been working on lately?
Okay, well, I've actually doing a bit more work on the Collaborative Press. There's just some things that we're doing at the moment. But also, aside from that, I decided I should help out my husband since, you know, I am in the business for marketing for authors, and he is a children's book illustrator, and he's done a series with a pastor, a retired pastor, and he gets the books printed and he does a circuit of preaching, and then he sells his books. And they've been, since it's the third book now, it's sort of taking off. The last one was about, instead of David and Goliath, the standard version, it's through the point of view of the 5 stones. So it's a children's book, so it's lots of fun. And he's done that with Daniel and the Lion's Den. He did it through the lion's point of view, and the Christmas story through the camel's point of view, with the 3 wise men, like the 3 camels. So anyway, it's been lots of fun. But he actually has joint copyright. So, and the pastor, he doesn't really want to do ebooks and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, my husband's allowed to publish them. So I said, look, I'm doing this for other people. He sort of hinted a few times, you know, building up subscribers, followers, you know, by offering a free book. So yeah, there's lots of promotions for children's books, and most children's books are clean. So so this is a great opportunity to reach a whole market, Christian market, and other sides. So yeah, so he'll be glad that I will finally do that. It's sort of like, I mean, I have a brother who's a tiler, and if I want my tiling done, I'd probably hire someone else to get someone, you know, we call them cashies in Australia. When you pay someone cash, sometimes you don't really get, you know, done on time, or exactly. Sometimes it's a bit more of a headache, and you might as well just get someone else. So yeah, so he'll be happy with me. I'll finally do something for him.
That's funny. That's how it works, though. Like, you know, if you're a mechanic, your car is the one that doesn't work so well, or that's too funny.
You know me. What have you been working on?
I turned in my first round of edits for Rahab's Courage. I'm heading back to Salma's brother. So poor Ben got shelved there for a couple of weeks. So he was a little sad. No, but I'm trying to I don't know, just trying to really like reformat marketing and socials, because Facebook's gotten some like really heavily filtered, like no interaction. And so I'm just I want to shift it over to Instagram. You know, I've got a bigger platform there, and then eventually build up on MeWe. So I have this all in my mind, and then I'm like, oh, Sarah Beth is releasing her book. I'm going to do a video, and I do it on Facebook. So I'm like, it's just still automatic to go and have that be my primary. So I'm trying to shift focus and get back in the groove of.
We're actually talking about Sarah and, you know, also platforms. Sarah's helped me out with some website building. So she's helped me revamp my personal author page, but she's doing the Collaborative Press one now. But because, you know, we're hearing all this, like, you know, with author media, different people are talking about you need to own your website. And so I was just using Wix, and I've been thinking for a long time, yeah, go to WordPress, got to do that. So you've getting your readers to your website, even buying direct from you, you know, and you've got control of that, you know, market. So if Facebook, something changes with them, and then no one can see your posts anymore, you know, you've got your subscribers, you've got your content there, that's not going to disappear your platform on your website. So it's quite important. But then, you know, when you're writing and you've got family life and schedules, you know, when are you going to find this time? And then I knew with WordPress, it's more complicated. I need to learn stuff. So, but Sarah, you know, took on the challenge, and so I'm doing a bit of marketing for her, and she's doing website building. And yeah, so it's been really good. And so we're going to offer that for the collaborative press to our clients for she specializes in author websites. She's been a blogger for years, and she's an author herself. So she sort of knows what people like, and she's very familiar with the plugins that you need. So it's really great. She's setting it up, and then I can just add content. So if I want to do a blog post, I can just copy something that she's done and change the content, and it's quite simple. I don't have to learn a lot to manage it. So yeah, probably by the time that we go to air, we'll have that on the collaborative website live with a new one. At the moment it's on Wix. But yeah, lisareneeauthor.com is a new site that she's done, and the collaborativepress.com is about to go live. So yeah, so that's good.
Yeah, it looks great. She's done a great job on it. And I think, I mean, I'm even filtering like these videos in through the website. So you've been super influential with me, but like, I know some viewers will be, okay, that's great. How do you get the people to the website? I understand that, but how do you draw the people? Like, I know you've been super influential with recommending having the magnet, the freebie to give away. Because honestly, people really don't care about you until you give something for free. So, so how do you get and maintain people coming to you? What would you recommend on that for authors who are struggling with that?
Yeah, definitely what you're saying. We need to get over the concept of giving away something for free, you know, oh, well, they're not going to be a genuine reader. But it's also you're an unfamiliar author to them. So they need to see probably more than like a little sample on Amazon, like the first couple of chapter or whatever. So it is good for them to get a good feel how you establish a story. So a novella or a short story, at least, you know, gets them to see what type of writer and what you stand for and your style. And then they can unsubscribe if they didn't like it, or so they sign up to your newsletter to get that free sample, that free novella.
Even if it takes time out of your writing, because it was 3 or 4 months maybe out of my normal, but it was so worth it because I got that novella. It's if you're interested, it's about Balaam and his talking donkey. It's biblical fiction. And yeah, so it's definitely been helpful. So I've seen a dramatic increase in my numbers. You know, I went from under 50 to I don't know, and maybe in a couple of months I'll need to switch platforms, you know. So I'm getting close to 600, 700 right now. So that's for a few months. That's pretty impressive. So
soon we're going to be speaking to David Rawlings, our guest, and he was talking about with even being a traditional publisher. Well, I do know that they often do short story magnets and things like that to build up, but you basically have to promote just like any indie author as well. Like you have to do all the marketing yourself pretty much. You know, your publisher might for the first month do something for you, but you got to do it all yourself. So that's just sort of the day and age we're in, especially with online marketing and getting out there. So you need to be on the forefront of that and in control of your website, your content, getting your subscribers, organising promotions and that kind of stuff. Okay, our guest today is award-winning author David Rawlings, who uses his writing skills to connect with other people and connect them with life itself. When you close the cover of one of his novels, it's not the end of the story. It's the start of something else: healing, reflection, reconciliation, the start of long overdue conversations. David resides in Australia and his novels are The Baggage Handler, The Camera Never Lies, and Where the Road Bends. Welcome, David. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be with you.
David, for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about you and what you write and who you are.
Okay, that's a very broad question. So who am I? I'm an author. I write, it's going to say I write Christian fiction. I now describe myself as a Christian who writes fiction because I think it's slightly different. I'm based in Adelaide, South Australia. So if you know where Lisa's from, you head east and just keep going for several days and you'll eventually run into me. And a lot of what I write contemporary and speculative stories. So stories that have been described as modern day parables. I take the values that I believe in and put them in a story in a way that presents life to readers so they can stop and take a moment to think about what it is that they're experiencing and what it is that they're going through.
Can you just tell us a bit what sparked the story, Where the Road Bends?
Here's one I prepared earlier. So Where the Road Bends is I'd written 2 novels, which were published, The Baggage Handler and then The Camera Never Lies, and I wanted to write a story based in Australia because, I mean, this accent's real, and I wanted to base something here. So I came up with an idea which looks at the question of destiny and how you arrived on the road of life. And the more I explored it, the more the outback became a place to set it. Because, I mean, Lisa, you and I know because we kind of live here, but the outback is beautiful and it's gorgeous and it's rugged and can kill you. So it seemed like a pretty good place to put 4 American college friends who reunite 15 years down the track and to get them to explore themselves while they're exploring my country. So it was a good story to write because, you know, we're Aussies, we're proud of where we come from. And it was a chance to show off some of the things that we have in our backyard to predominantly my readers in the US, but also around the world as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that I've done as well. You know, you read all these American books and American settings and historical fiction about America, and it's great. I've learned so much, but yeah, just want to like show off my country as well and have an American come to Australia and their reaction to it and exploring it. So yeah, it's like people have told me, you know, they feel like they're coming and visiting Australia and obviously we make it sound really awesome even more. We don't talk about the flies.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, but you don't Steve Irwin it up and have everybody going crikey and all that sort of stuff. But in a COVID time too, when nobody can go on holidays or vacation, if I want to be bilingual about it, it's a chance to see Australia when you can't come here because our government closed the gate and no one's allowed in or out, basically. So it's a good way to, as you write, Lisa, it's a good way to get people to holiday here, really.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to read, and for me to come and visit your country that way. Absolutely. What inspired you to start writing?
Writing fiction or writing anything?
You choose. Okay,
so I write for a living. So I'm a corporate copywriter, but I've been writing since I was 5, and I think this is just what I do. So I've worked through journalism, corporate communication. I used to work in PR and publicity, and now I'm moving into fiction. So I've always put words on the screen so I could put food on the table. And the extension to that is to write these stories that I was collecting over years that I was going to get to one day. And so now I guess I'm applying the skill set that I've developed over a couple of decades just in the fiction world. And so, yeah, to me, I've always been a writer. It's just how I've applied it is different. And now that I'm in fiction, I'm applying it to stories rather than, say, corporate work or journalism.
Excellent. And so you said your 3rd book's set in Australia. What about your first 2? Where are they set?
First 2, well, I kind of based them in any city. So I wanted people to be able to engage with it. And when The Baggage Handler came out, that's set in the airport and then a couple of corporate settings and then a baggage depot. And I've had people from Nashville, New York, Sydney, Amsterdam all ask me the question, did you set it in my hometown? And the answer is always, yeah, of course. I wanted to do that because one of the challenges that I think I've got as an Aussie writer is when you're writing for marketplaces that aren't yours, particularly those who don't have, say, a global awareness or even an understanding of what Australia is. I thought I'd go for something that they could tailor for themselves. And it seems to work pretty well. So first one was in airport and baggage depot. The Camera Never Lies was about a marriage counsellor. So it was about his suburban home and also his counselling office. So it was a way to allow readers to take the story and make it theirs. And then, of course, the 3rd one, Jump to Outback Australia, which is a little hard to tailor, so I didn't even try.
And were they any Australian characters in the first 2? Oh.
No, they were very, I was going to say generic. I think they were just people. There was no real characteristics or quirks. No one had a twang or a drawl. No one wore a hat. They were just people. So yeah, for those first two, I wanted, because they're values-based stories, I wanted people to be able to take the values and apply them to wherever they are. And that means geographically as well as life. And the feedback I got would suggest that people are doing that. So I'm glad I did, actually. It's a good way to get across a story with some values in it. Because if you disconnect readers with sort of locations when you're talking about values, sometimes that can be enough to disconnect them from the messaging in the story itself. So yeah, so no specific Aussies, no specific Americans or Africans or whoever. It was just people.
So what would you want your readers to come away from after reading your books?
More questions than answers, Naomi. So one of the things about the word parable is always associated with Jesus. And when you go back to Jesus' ministry, most of the time he asked questions. Most of the time he challenged people, or he told a story in order to illustrate a larger truth. So one of the things that I want people to come away with after reading The Baggage Handler is, all right, am I carrying baggage? And if so, what is it? And if I am, what do I do with it? Or with The Camera Never Lies, that was about honesty and transparency in marriage. So am I honest with people? And so one thing that I really like is when people take time to message and go, hey, read your book. The one thing I do like to hear is I couldn't put it down, because that means I've got the pacing right. But I also hear from people who say, you know what, I didn't realize that I'd never spoken to my sister properly, and now I am. Or I'm now rethinking how I've arrived at this position in life with where the road bends, and now I'm thinking where I go from here. So I guess I'm just posing questions, and that's what I want people to do is walk away with an idea of, oh, how did that apply to me? Same sort of principle as the parables, really.
And I've been looking at your reviews, and either people really love this concept, or I think they're unsettled, like they don't really know what to think about.
Yeah.
I think even though they may have not left the best review, you've still done your job with that, because they're like, I don't know about this. Like, I can't figure this out, you know?
Yeah,
So I think
exactly.
you've done well with that.
And yeah, and that puts reviews in a different perspective as well. I know as authors, you know, we pump up the 5 stars and we pretend the 1 stars don't exist. And we try to, and we're all fragile creatures, writers. And so we're putting ourselves out there for criticism. So I get why we do it. But yeah, part of the reason for doing this is I've spoken to someone who said to me, actually goes to our church. He said, he goes to our church now, which will be relevant in a moment, but he said, yeah, I read The Baggage Handler, I didn't really like it. And then he spoke to me a couple of months later and he said, I think I know why I didn't like it. He said, part of my journey to finding faith was your book. But at the start, it was really unsettling. And that's why he didn't like it. It wasn't, he didn't think I could write. He didn't like my choice of language. He didn't like the fact that it was making him, it was convicting him. So yeah, I think you're right. I think if it's done its job, it's made people think. In a book club situation, it's done its job if it makes people talk. I was talking to a book club in Detroit, actually, and they'd set aside 45 minutes to talk about The Baggage Handler, and an hour and a half in, they had to send everybody home. And so when I heard that, I thought, okay, that's great. That's the purpose of the story.
Wow.
So it's done what it needed to do.
Excellent. And I mean, it's great, you know, we want to entertain people and take them to a different place and all that, but definitely as Christians, we want to impact them and get them thinking. Yeah. And we're not trying to convert them to our thinking. We're just challenging and bringing up these things, and it's how they interpret it and what they're going through and their relationships. Yep. And so that's like a sermon, right. Like it can mean so many different things to different people, but it's great to put it in a way where they're in the character's point of view and experiencing that and challenging. So that's great.
Yeah, you're right. And I find too, in a world that is ridiculously polarized, where you're either 100% for me or 100% hate me, the best way to engage with people about deeper issues is often just engage with questions, to engage with why do you believe what you believe. I do that all the time. And it seems to be a good way of cutting through and being able to talk to people about things that otherwise put the defenses up, and there's no way that you can actually talk to them about whatever the issue is.
That's right. And people are so busy. We're just so busy in the routine, doing a job, doing a family, you know, sometimes just to even have quiet and think, you know, about, oh yeah, like you're saying, I haven't spoken to my sister for a long time or whatever, you know, this person's getting challenged. It's, yeah, making them, they're reading a book to relax and, you know, get a bit of insight out of it, but also it's pausing and actually, because a book takes longer than a sermon or a movie. It's,
Yeah.
you know, you read it over a week or a day, or, you know, like, and you've got time to process it. So that's what I love about
exactly.
that.
Exactly.
Now, with as far as you and what you get your inspiration from, is there any books that, you know, have inspired you? Maybe it's craft
anything
or another fiction.
Anything by C.S. Lewis. If C.S. Lewis wrote it, I read it, and I probably read it half a dozen times. So I'm in awe of his ability to fashion not an argument, but a position in a way that's entertaining. And I will be inspired by anybody who has a mastery of language. I'm a copywriter. I have been for 30 years. So words are my tools in the same way that a mate of mine is a carpenter. And so he's got his tools in a toolbox on the back of the ute. Sorry, pick up, Naomi. But words are my tools. So if I read something and it's poetic, or if it's double layers in terms of meaning, I'll be inspired by that. And you can pick up that sort of stuff everywhere. But yeah, anything by C.S. Lewis is me.
Yep. And what about you? Do you hide any, you know, little nuggets or subtext in your, or secrets in your book only a few people will find or pick up?
Yeah, I do actually. I haven't done anything with it yet, but I'm a musician. So, and I love music, and I grew up in the 80s. So in my first 3 novels, I've buried 2 or 3 dozen 80s music references throughout the entire story. And I'll probably do something with it one day, and somebody can, you know, win a trip to a Bon Jovi concert or something or other, if they can find them all. But yeah, I have these little nuggets. People who know me look for it now because they know about it. But yeah, I bury 80s music references. So you might even find them yourself, Lisa. I mean, you're a child of
I love the 80s.
As well. Yeah. So that's the sort of stuff that I bury in there.
Yeah, I remember when the Muppets came out in the movie, and it was great to take all the family back. Oh, it was just all about the 80s, and I was just getting it, and the kids were just looking at me. But it was just great.
As my kids told me the other day, that was 40 years ago. I should get on with my life. But yeah, it was a better time. As I said to them, you know, it was a great time without COVID, so instantly it's better.
So along those lines, how do you feel Christian fiction market has changed over the past 5 to 10 years, or even back to the 80s if you want? How do you see it going?
Well, back to the 80s, it was probably Frank Peretti and Catherine Marshall. That was it. How it's going, it's exploding. It's such a breadth of opportunity now, because you can self-publish, you can get out novellas, you can use lead magnets where you've got a free story that goes out, and you can publish it all yourself. So that's good to see. I think it's breaking out of romance. It's sort of been in the romance field for a very long time. And that's kind of the chicken and egg principle, because, you know, a lot of women are drawn to fiction. They tend to read romance, so romance appears in a lot of fiction. So I think I've read some really interesting stuff recently that's either speculative or sci-fi or mystery or suspense. And so I think Christian fiction is sort of expanding its tentacles out, which is really good to see. But I think I mentioned before, we live in a really polarized world. I think that the time for talking about faith and values in fiction has never been more needed than now, especially when you look at some of the stuff we see on TV that's classified as quote unquote entertainment. If you're going to go to the, you know, the shallow end of the pool, I think counterpointing that with some stuff that's about, you know, faith and wholesome stuff, and engaging with people and saying you don't actually have to read all that sort of stuff in order to be entertained. I think the fact that we're getting a lot more Christian fiction now than before, I think this is the time that it needs to be more. So I'm glad it is.
Excellent. And so how does your faith impact your writing? So things that you're going through, things you're struggling with, things that God's showing you and speaking to you. How do you, are you just following like a plot and an idea, or are you actually putting some of the things that you're experiencing and learning?
the one thing I found when you focus too much on Christian fiction as a concept, it brings people's misconceptions and preconceived ideas into it. So they either think that you write romance or you kind of write Left Behind Part 2, sort of, Hardy Boys and the Apocalypse kind of thing. But I think for me, being a Christian writing fiction, this is my story. It's my take. It's my perception. The characters are my imaginary friends who are built out of my experiences. So from that point of view, I think the values are embedded in the story. So there's a very fine line when you're writing parables, I've found, is that if you go too far into it's a sermon, it's way too preachy. And I don't like reading that stuff, let alone writing that stuff. If you can skip over it, because, okay, I get it. This is about redemption. I get it. So for me, I try to develop a story around the pace and the action of a plot, which is tangible, which again is what Jesus used to do. Jesus is, if anybody had all the answers, it was him. But instead of rocking up to a place and saying, oh, you need to do this and you need to do this and I've got all the answers, he said, anybody lost a coin? And he went, yeah, me. Oh, well, here we go. So I think that's how I try to get around the preachy side of things, is to say, look, this is tangible and it's based on the faith that I have and the values that I hold. So I think that's how it comes through. Well, hopefully it does anyway.
All right, I have a very serious question.
Oh, here we go.
Here we go. How did you get interested in American football? Because as I understand it, everybody else thinks that we do football wrong.
You do, but I follow it anyway. Look, I'm a sports nut. Most Aussies are. Would that be fair, Lisa?
No, not me.
I'm asking the wrong person.
Or my husband. We don't watch AFL football.
Yeah, no, I love watching any type of sport, Naomi, always have. And back in the 80s, when I was a teenager, I would watch anything. And from America, we used to get NBA and NFL. So I watched basketball, but because, I used to work for the Australian Football League here in Australia. So I followed NFL. So back in the 80s, I picked the Kansas City Chiefs as my team, which destined me to 30 years of pain, which changed. Patrick Mahomes arrived and then the pain went away, and then last year it all came back again. So I just got interested in just from watching it from afar. And yeah, I'll watch any sport. That's one thing stereotypically us Aussies do is we're sport nuts and we're on the beach. That's what we do. So
I think my husband's similar. We don't have a whole lot of access to non-American sports, but he probably would watch football and and rugby if it was available. But yeah, I'm kind of in there by proxy. So we're Cardinals fans.
Okay.
But I did spend a lot of time in New England, so I'm not sorry that your Chiefs lost.
Okay, I think we're going to cut the interview right here.
I was watching a comedian dry bar. I watch clean comedy, and it's up and it's really cool. But a lot of, they're Christian, or they just don't, have bad content. But yeah, when they start going into the football, and this last night guy was going about this one, and we're just like, Dave and I are going, all right, you lost us there. Us Aussies. We got your international viewers. We don't know what you're talking about. But just getting onto your career, David. So, you've got these 3 books. It's great to have a publisher behind you and building your platform. But there's a lot of authors, they're doing hybrid now. They're doing self-publishing, and they'll because they're finding the traditional route is quite slow, like it's 1 book a year maybe, or even like 2 years before you see your book coming out. Have you ever considered self-publishing?
Yeah, I've self-published before in the non-fiction field. So I've written a couple of books that I've done myself because they're relative to the corporate experience I had at the time. So I've done it before. And talking to a number of authors that I really respect, I've put 3 books on bookshelves. They've put 33 books or 63 books or 93 books on the shelves. And they're talking about it as well. So I'm sort of inspired by them. I don't see self-publishing and traditional publishing as enemies. I just think it's another avenue to get your stories out. So yeah, I'd consider it, and I've done it before. So the question always comes back to me at the moment is, when you're running a business and running a family and trying to have a life, how do you fit it in? So providing that equation works, then absolutely, it's something to consider.
And one thing I did, so just for our viewers, David Rawlings did a class at the Mega Christian Writers, and one little thing that you mentioned was speech to text. And and I was like, oh, that sounds good. I'd like to try that. And so it didn't work for me at start. I did try a little bit. I just didn't really get my head around the concept, because at the time I was writing very polished chapter by chapter with a setting and researching it. And I was sort of doing that one a day, but now I'm much more like, just get the story out, just get what's happening and the dialogue. And now, I'm doing a lot more speech to text. I've spoken on this show. And that is something for authors, to a way of, fitting in your lifestyle. Like, so I'm going to pick up the kids and I'm in the waiting line picking them up, and I might just do a scene and it might be 500 words done while I'm in the line, just recording on my phone with my headphones in.
It also works really well for a first draft. I mean, my first 3 novels, I almost dictated the first draft. But the part of the reason I do it is it fits into my workflow, as you say. So one of the things I do, I also lecture at uni. So when I'm heading into the city, I've got 45 minutes on the train. So I'll just put the headphones on and listen to myself, and cringe, because it's not as great as it sounded at the time. But once you actually edit that and put that onto the page, you've actually got almost a second draft. So it actually helps to speed up the process as well. It's all just about finding ways that it works for you, because we can all go and sit at, watch somebody's presentation or a workshop or listen to their podcast, but it ultimately boils down to, well, how does this fit me in terms of style, in terms of genre, in terms of language, or in terms of production? So that's what I do. So use that time wisely in the school pickup line, Lisa.
Yeah, that's great advice, to just really to do what works for you. Absolutely. So really quickly, tell us about what you're working on currently, David.
Okay, so I'm writing novel number 4, which is what would happen if reality TV and church came head to head. So basically, it's in a very, very small nutshell. It's the story of a reality TV guru who's at the risk of getting fired because his programs are failing. And he comes across an idea of doing a reality show about churches. And so 2 churches participate in this TV show called Pastor Swap, thinking that it's going to help them achieve their aims. One of them's trying to save their church from the real estate developers, because after the pandemic, they lost a number of people who went to their church, which I know, talking to people here, is a real thing for churches. And a mega church, which is the son of the guy who runs it, wants to prove to his dad that he can actually do this. And so it's a story about how this TV show is put together and how these 2 churches are manipulated by television into doing what TV wants them to do. And ultimately poses the question, if the God of the 21st century is the media, is our God bigger? And so, no spoilers, but that's how the story rolls out. So that's been a fun one to write, because personally and professionally, I despise reality television. It's not reality by any stretch. It's edited to within an inch of its life. But it's also an opportunity to talk about, and I've been in churches, for 50 years, warming pews, standing up the front, doing all sorts of things. It's a chance to look at why we do what we do, and to put people in situations where they might be less comfortable than what they're used to, which I know, talking to a lot of Christians, is how some of them, in fact, I'd say most of them, are actually reviewing, thinking about and reflecting on how they do church in a post-pandemic world. So that's kind of the story that's developing, and it's fun to write. It's a little bit longer than the other 3, probably more of a traditional novel length. But that's not because I like to write short things. That's just where the other stories ended, and this one's still going. So, so that's what I'm working on at the moment.
Yeah, well, it does sound fun. And it sounds like it will be something that, provoking people thinking and all that kind of stuff, and challenging how we do things. But also, it sounds like a really funny, it's going to have some funny moments in there. So tell us, so people can keep in touch with you when your new release comes out. What's your website and where are you hanging out online?
www.davidrawlings.com.au. So Naomi, you need the .au bit. Otherwise you end up with a bluegrass guitarist, I found out. So he's good and plays good music, but he's not writing. So head to my website, subscribe to the newsletter. I've got some free short stories there that you can, once you subscribe, you get them for free. Head to the website, catch up with me on Facebook. or Insta. I'm on there as well. Although I'm finding that politically as well as personally, people are changing how they handle social media at the moment. Probably the best place to go is the website. And I've got some excerpts where you can read the first 3 books. There's some audio excerpts as well. And if you're part of a book club, I've got some resources there for your book club as well. So it's all available on the web, or I'll have a chat to you in social media.
Excellent. Well, we so appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
No, pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. And we will have all the websites in the links and social media for David Rawlings, so you can keep in touch with him, and also get his free short stories. Naomi and I always offer free short stories. Well, I've got the Act 1 of Polarized Love, which is set in Australia. And Naomi?
And my biblical fiction on Desolate Heights is about Balaam and his talking donkey. That's available at my newsletter as well. And David also has 3 short stories that you can download by subscribing to his website, and then give him a like when you see him on social media. And we're so thankful that you joined us here today.
No, pleasure. Thanks for having me. Lisa, great to talk to an Aussie accent in the podcast interview. It's really good.
Yep, it's always refreshing to hear another Australian. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Until next time, let us run with endurance the race set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. God bless. See you next time. So thank you again for joining us today on Behind the Story with Naomi and Lisa. Don't forget to click on the links and subscribe to our YouTube channels, and you'll keep up to date with our author interviews. Have a great week. God bless.